Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for being here today. We really appreciate you taking time to come to this homeless donations media event, and it's a wonderful time of year. It's our favorite time of year, and especially here in Utah more than anywhere else. I'm very lucky. I get to brag about our state everywhere I go, and the first thing I always remind people is that we are the most generous state in the nation, and there isn't a close second. And I have all the data to back it up. But with that generosity this time of year, we do this every year, but we especially this year we want to draw attention to an ongoing issue that we have when it comes to helping our friends who are experiencing homelessness here in the state of Utah. Because we're so generous, people want to go out and people want to help, and in doing so, unfortunately, sometimes we can do more harm than good. And so I have some friends here that are going to talk a little bit more about that. But this is a growing concern, and it's actually becoming a public safety and a public health issue. Now, I have to tell you, when I was a kid, I remember my grandma sharing with me the story of the little match girl, the story of the little girl who actually freezes overnight on the street because she doesn't have any money, and she doesn't have the help that she needs. And this is a story that stayed with me. And so whenever I see one of our friends experiencing homelessness on the street, my first impulse is I want to give them something. I want to help them. Part of that is a little bit selfish too, because it feels really good to do that. And we don't want to discourage giving at all this time of year. But what we do want to let people know is that we have these incredible service providers that are here to help us do that in a way that makes sure we get people the help that they need in a way that doesn't that doesn't harm them or provide a harm to others. And I will tell you that all of our friends experiencing homelessness know about our service providers, and if they don't, they do very soon, because they're out actively finding the people that need help every day. That's what they do. And so we want to make sure that we're giving in the right way. We'll talk about some of those safety concerns a little bit more here in just a second. So this applies not just to money. We've talked a lot about panhandling and the dangers of panhandling. We'll talk about that a little bit more too in just a second. But this applies to blankets. It applies to clothes, coats, and food as well. All of this needs to go through the service providers. That's where it can do the most good, and again, make sure that it doesn't harm our friends in any way. So with that, we're going to turn the microphone over to some of our friends here. Chief Mike Brown with Salt Lake City PD is going to discuss some of the public safety concerns that may occur from trying to donate items to individuals on the street. Then Gary Edward with the Salt Lake County Health Department will address some of the public health concerns. And then Kathy Bray with Volunteers of America is going to talk to us and share with us the added benefit of donating to our service providers. And then I'll wrap things up and we can take some questions. So with that, Chief Brown.
Thank you. Good afternoon, and thank you. You know, the things that we take for granted, others are praying for. And during this holiday season, there are many families and organizations that come to Salt Lake City to donate to those that really need a hand up and the things that are being given out. But a lot of times, these donations end up going to the street. And when they end up on the street, it causes public safety issues. There are fights, there are assaults, there are traffic problems, there are hoarding. And then, when things aren't wanted, they're discarded and left on the streets. That takes a lot of service providers, a lot of resources from the city and the county to clean those things up. And so, like the Lieutenant Governor said, there is a better way. And the better way is to make sure you donate to our service providers. That includes St. Vincent's Clothing Room, which we're here in right now, Volunteers of America, 4th Street Clinic, Salt Lake Rescue Mission, and the Road Home. These service providers do their very best to make sure those in need get the items that they truly need. And the people that are experiencing homelessness and need these things know where these service providers are. Let's continue to be a compassionate community. Let's make sure we give in the most effective way that has the most impact. let's answer some prayers this holiday season. And on another note, these little cards are going to be distributed to our officers, and so as people donate, we want to just remind them that the better way is to donate to our service providers. Thank you.
For the health department, this situation we're talking about today presents a little different perspective for us. We certainly applaud all of the individuals, families, volunteer organizations who come together this time of year and throughout the year to provide food and other support to our homeless community. We're as concerned with that community and their safety and health as we are the rest of Salt Lake County. And so it's important for us to make sure that the services, the food that is provided is done so in a safe and in an equitable manner so that as many as possible can be served with safe and nutritious foods. Two main concerns we have is food being prepared in kitchens that are not overseen by the health department. This is a vulnerable population. They come with some underlying health conditions, many of them. And we want to make sure that the food is as safe and nutritious as possible. And we have great resources in our community who can use volunteers, can use financial donations, can use food donations to prepare those nutritious and safe and healthy meals. There's also the situation alluded to by Chief Brown. When individuals come and provide a meal on the street, unfortunately, sometimes that ends up creating a litter and trash problem in our community that then has to be resolved. And so again, if we can provide these feeding resources in a facility where there are hand washing facilities, there are trash receptacles available for the individuals who are receiving those foods, it provides a better service for them, an equitable service for that population. Again, we want to encourage the volunteer and the donations that take place. It's critical and essential for this community. We appreciate these volunteer organizations that exist in providing these services. We wouldn't be able to accomplish the things that we do as a community providing for this very vulnerable group without those groups. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Kathy Bray with Volunteers of America Utah, representing the service providers today. And I want to let the community know that we're so appreciative of their generosity, and we encourage everybody to contribute directly to service providers. When you're feeling the Christmas spirit and you want to give outside of your family and loved ones, please do. We need your support. The greatest need, of course, is always financial contributions. Beyond that, we have created systems to provide the acceptance of community donations and then the distribution of those donations in an efficient manner that makes sure that everybody gets what they need. We want to encourage people to come into the shelters, to come into the dining facilities. We do that when our street outreach teams go out and find people who are sitting outside. It is cold outside. It's the time of year when we really want to encourage people to come in. So please keep that in mind and bring your donations to our facilities. You can see slchost.org to find the websites for multiple nonprofit organizations who are working together very hard this cold winter to make sure that people who don't have a home right now have the basic things that they need: food, clothes, and shelter, and then much more than that, of course, to move out of homelessness. So please give to the service providers to make a difference in people's lives this Christmas season. And Merry Christmas.
Thanks, Kathy. Well, thank you to everyone for their messages today. I just want to add a couple things. I had a really interesting discussion with Pamela Atkinson several weeks ago, who many of you know, who's been involved with all of these organizations. And Pamela shared something with me when it comes to panhandling that I had never thought before. As you all well know, we have an opioid epidemic that is afflicting our country, and our state is not immune to that. And unfortunately, we've seen the drug problems that have happened here in Salt Lake City and across our state. You know, we've been working very, very closely with Chief Brown over the last couple months with our Highway Patrol as well, and Commissioner Squires and his team. We are now providing more treatment beds than ever before for the people that are addicted to drugs. But that being the case, we know that it's still a problem out there. And this is the thing that Pamela told me that I had never thought before. We were talking about panhandling and the problem with panhandling, and she said, you know, the biggest problem that people don't recognize is that money that you hand that panhandler right there on the street, that might be the dosage that ends up killing that person. This might be the time they get an overdose. This might be the time they get a bad dose of fentanyl or some other drug, and you might literally be killing the person you're trying to help. And that really changed my perspective when it comes to panhandling. I've known that it's not the best way to help people, and that more often than not it gets used for things other than food or shelter. And so I hope that people will just remember this season to check that impulse, and but don't stop giving. Take that money that you would donate to the panhandler and give it to one of these great charitable organizations. I also want to remind people that while this is the time of year that we think about it, that these needs and these organizations exist year-round, not just during the Christmas season. And so we would hope that all of you will pledge today and always. In fact, you can actually go online and pledge at userve.utah.gov. Pledge to donate all throughout the year. We have needs. We have people, and again, our service providers who are here helping and willing to help and do so all year round. Thanks to everyone for their generosity, and we wish you a very Merry Christmas, a Happy Holidays. And with that, we're happy to take any questions you might have.
Back when we did this same thing last summer, and billboards went up that said "Don't Give," and this representation was made that the money you give a panhandler will go to drugs. Glenn Bailey at the Crossroads Urban Center pushed back against that and said that disparages all homeless people, the notion that they're all on drugs. The other part of that is that prior to Operation Rio Grande, I interviewed a 60-year-old grandmother down here, heroin addict. And that was on the heels of this first press conference last summer. And she was really dispirited because she said she needed to panhandle to get other things that she needs to survive, including food and water. So what do you say to that?
Well, what I say is I'll let Pamela and Glenn have that discussion together. But I can tell you that the statistics are very clear. And there is a huge distinction between homelessness and drug addiction. And we're not trying to conflate those two at all. We have friends experiencing homelessness who are clearly not addicted to drugs. But that being said, when it comes to panhandling, and there have been many independent investigations done on panhandling, and a very large percentage of the dollars that are taken in by panhandlers are done by professional panhandlers and by those who are using it for drugs. And so again, that is money, and all of those friends of ours who can come and get what they need, they can get the clothing they need, they can get the food they need, they can get the shelter they need, and they can get the help that they need by donating that money. We know 100% of the donations that go to these guys, we know where that goes. We know where very little of the panhandling money goes. And so if you're going to make a mistake, we're going to err always on giving to our service providers where we know we can help more people and make sure that it's used appropriately and not in a way that could harm or hurt someone.